right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to TAPED CRUSADERS, the podcast that reviews every single superhero movie and TV show ever made. I'm your co-host, Mike L. And as always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell. And today we're going to be taking a look at the 1990...
That's
90,
right. That's right.
Dick Tracy movie.
And we are joined by Meteor co-owner Champ Ian.
Hi.
What's
going on, guys?
So
How you
once
doing?
again, you know what? Before we dive into this movie, I want to start with you, Champion,
Ooh.
because you're notorious for not reading any comic books, any comic strips,
Yeah,
watching cartoons,
yeah.
anything fun.
Never.
Have you ever heard of Dick Tracy before today?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I have. In 1990, when this came out,
Okay.
this was absolutely everywhere.
Sure.
This was just like, this was as hyped in the media, I think, as Batman was, coming on the heels
Wow.
of
Yeah,
Batman.
and this is before your time, right, Josh?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so as we know, Batman had the Bat logo,
Mhm.
and that was everywhere, and it was huge. But you're right; it felt like now this was a trend, and so there was kind of like a, what's it called? Like not an under, like when you, like a brevity to everyone's advertising. Instead of hitting one over the head with like a Drew Struzan poster, it was just a shot of Dick Tracy looking at his wristwatch.
Wow.
and
Right.
But
just
it was a
tagline.
cartoony,
Yes, a cartoony
like
drawing,
a line
poster.
drawing.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. And it was like the tagline was, "I'm on my way." Now, as I said earlier, and I'll say this again, when Batman hit and it was huge, in my mind, I thought, oh, I'm a comic book fan. Now there's going to be an X-Men movie. Now there's going to be a Spider-Man movie. There's going to
Right.
be a Superman movie. But there wasn't. Instead, the message that Hollywood got was, oh, people want 1930s
Detectives.
pulp characters.
Right.
They want Dick Tracy. They want the Phantom. They want the Shadow.
Even Batman, to some extent, was a detective,
Well,
right? Like he
what I
started
mean
off
is,
that way.
yeah,
right?
what I mean
So-
is Batman gave the
Yeah.
wrong message, in my
Yeah.
opinion, and none of them were nearly as big. This movie didn't do nearly as well as Batman. It was a big hit. The number I remember was 130 million, which is maybe
It's pretty good.
half of what Batman made.
Okay.
Maybe
That's impressive.
pretty good,
though,
pretty good.
considering
yeah, considering
the movie that it was.
all things considered. Josh, what was your impression of this growing up before you saw it again this week, or the first time this week?
This is my first time
Wow.
watching it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I, to be honest, I had no idea this movie existed.
Wow.
I
Okay.
don't think I've ever heard of this movie. I've heard
Wow.
of Dick Tracy.
Okay.
I've heard of like the pulps. I've definitely read some of the comic strips.
Sure.
I don't think I've read any books. Like I don't know how popular the like full stories were, but I've definitely read like strips
Sure.
of Dick Tracy. I feel like it's just very popular. Like
it's very
yeah.
that's what's
Part
the-
of like the cultural like comic book
Zeitgeist.
Zeitgeist.
Yeah.
I love that word.
Yeah, so Dick Tracy is a comic strip created by Chester Gould, and it was there's some comic books as well. And during the time this movie was out, there was I think there was a new book launched by Kyle Baker that had some really cool art. And I've read some of the Chester Gould stuff. And it's fine for what it is. It's kind of like a staple of the medium. There was 1930s Dick Tracy serials and movies as well. But the one thing I want to point out is that before Batman became so ingrained in pop culture, especially with the Adam West TV show, the idea of a villain that was an exaggerated parody satire of a 1930s gangster, it was Dick Tracy that started it.
Right.
And there's actually, and the proof I have is there was what was the Looney Tunes cartoon that was in the late 80s, early 90s? It was not Animaniacs. It was the other one. It was like
Tiny Toons?
Tiny Toons.
Oh,
So there was a Tiny Toons cartoon
got one.
where they did a little Batman parody, like a little 8-minute
Right.
Batman parody. And in the Batman parody, whoever the duck character was like the version of Batman. And in that cartoon, he was going through all of his rogues gallery, his villains, and he was like, this guy, that guy. And then it was like, oh no, question mark. And it was like a parody of the Riddler, right? However, that cartoon was almost a remake of a Daffy Duck cartoon where it was the same plot and the same gags. However, it was all Dick Tracy parody.
Really?
Yeah. So it was like, we have a Dick Tracy parody. Now we're going to just reuse it as a Batman parody. So
Okay.
that's basically what the legacy
Yeah.
of this is. So anyway, so this movie came out. Warren Beatty started it and directed it. What an egomaniac asshole! Who would do such a thing?
Who does that?
Yeah. But pretty good. I mean, better than I thought. I actually rewatched it during the pandemic, and now I've rewatched it again.
So how many times for you altogether?
At least 3, if not, maybe as a kid I saw it a few times and I forgot.
Okay.
But
it was 0 times for you, Josh.
Yeah.
0 times. 0 times for me as well.
Interesting. So, Champion, why don't you tell us first impression? What did you think?
Well, first impression. It was frustrating at times, but overall, it was wildly artistic.
Sure.
Wildly. And I am going to take away more from this movie, years from now reflecting on this, because I'm probably not going to watch it again. But just the style.
Sure.
It just oozed style. But in terms of cinematic elements, the editing was a little frustrating. The plot was a little frustrating. Some of the I don't know. It was very well crafted visually.
Yeah.
Josh, do you want to add?
Yeah,
to that?
I don't think I've ever been so fascinated by a movie that I did not like before.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great
like,
point. That's
that
like,
is.
It's not a great movie. The acting's not fantastic, but it has so much charm to it. The setting, the costumes, the characters, the music. Like there's so much that works in this movie. But I just think it's a bad movie. It's not a great story.
You know what? It's less than the sum of its parts. Maybe that's one way of putting it.
Yeah.
That's another good way of putting it.
Because, the visuals were so interesting. Like, obviously inspired by Tim Burton's Batman, but in some ways it adds an extra level of artifice.
In some ways it dunks on Tim Burton's Batman. Like in some very real ways.
Right. Like the way Warren Beatty, he has a career of directing. I think he did Bugsy, which he also starred in.
What?
What an asshole. But he there's some shots in the film where the camera's over here and then it pans out and zooms into another place, but it's clearly like a painting or something. So that's wow, what is this? Fritz Lang, Metropolis?
Or the foreground elements
right.
are superimposed on top to make to push the perspective so much. Like there's a couple of moments in particular I've that stuck out to me. Like when the kid is going to go grab the wallet and the badge, it's the wallet and the badge is superimposed way in front and the kid is reaching towards nothing. And then the badge is right up next to the thing. And then the can of chili as well.
The chili scene, yeah.
You know what I think that might be? It might be that's a technique Brian De Palma used a lot where you have the foreground in focus and the background in focus and you split the screen.
Okay.
So that everything's in focus, but it also looks kind of weird.
Yeah.
It looks like it's blue screened on top of the shot.
Yeah, because it even had a weird fuzz around the edge of the foreground. Yeah.
It absolutely works for a comic book style.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
As well as the colors. This film, Dick Tracy has a primary yellow trench coat. There's a lot of primary green, a lot of primary red. That was the whole movie. And then once in a while they'll have a purple in the background. So I don't know if it won any awards or anything, but it certainly deserved it for art design. And okay, we got to talk about the makeup. The makeup for these bad guys, we can go through the list, but my favorite was Flat Top.
Yeah.
The best villain in the movie. There was also
Prune Face.
Prune Face was so good. There was, I think, a small face or a little face or something. Right?
Yeah. No Face.
No.
Right. Oh yeah.
There was
a little face.
There was the little face.
Little face.
There was
you're right,
lips.
Yeah.
Something. There was there was
numbers.
Numbers.
He was the owl guy.
Okay.
He had the glasses.
Okay.
And he was
Have you
lisp?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Much experience? Have you read any Dick Tracy?
A couple, just a few strips.
Are these? Because I was getting the impression that these villains were wholesale. Let's make these characters up in real life. Let's take this exaggerated drawing and let's one-to-one make this an on-screen.
From my faded memory, that's accurate. And they tried to do it with Warren Beatty. There's screen tests where they gave him a square, a triangular nose, like the comic book.
Okay.
And it just didn't look
No,
great. So they just let him be Warren Beatty instead.
Yeah,
probably the right decision.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to look at that the entire movie.
Right. That's the thing is like there was one cop, at least one cop that had the makeup.
Yeah.
And I thought, maybe it should only be a bad guy thing because there was one cop that also had an exaggerated face.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought they should maybe only keep it for the bad guys. That's just me though. I don't know.
Yeah. I think for the most part it worked. Especially with like the named bad guys. I think at times the henchmen or the background characters felt a little bit distracting.
Sure.
Because my eye was drawn towards them, whether they were the focus of the shot or not.
Sure.
So at times I feel like maybe they could have toned it down a little bit.
Okay.
And then kept it for those like named bad guys that are supposed to be those big presence on screen. Because I think there's even like the news reporters, and they have like a weird like long crooked like it's so again at times it was a bit much, but it always looked really good.
I think you might have hit the nail on the head, and that's the lack of maybe focus is the word, because I think it's like, okay, in a shot if you have 10 characters, the main characters should stand out, but they don't sometimes. And also that rule kind of applies to editing. If everything is super fast paced and hitting you over the head, it's almost like, okay, what are we supposed to focus on? Like you have to take it like, and this is, that's almost like Christopher Nolan's weakness, where he edits movies like a trailer. Everything is like boom, boom, boom. And I felt like at the beginning of this movie, every scene was like 15 seconds long. Okay, 2 lines onto the next thing, 2 lines onto the next thing. And there was never a time in the movie where I felt like I was watching real people interact. It just felt like one-liner, plot.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think that could be the weakness of the film is Warren Beatty didn't know what to focus on and what to zero in on. He just threw everything at
100%. And particularly at the beginning of the movie, they kept, when it was like those quick cut moments,
right?
Like action was happening. We were cutting from the bad guys to Dick Tracy, and then we were cutting back to Madonna singing, and it was like, I was waiting for something to happen with her character in
that montage.
In the montage, right? Like it felt like it was building up to it all leading there, and then it didn't, and then it happened again, and I was like, okay, now, well, there we go. And then the third time it happened, I was like, oh, okay, this is just weird.
Yeah, that's
like,
a good point.
Almost like they needed more Madonna screen time for like the songs and like the presence of her being a star.
Right.
And I feel like they could have just incorporated her character into the story better.
We'll get let's get to the characters in a minute. But I want to point out one gag that, as a kid, I saw in the theater, and everyone giggled. But this time around, it stood out more. Remember when he's beating up the guy in that shed, and the shed is like rocking back and forth.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I love that is because I think in the modern day of CGI, that joke could not exist because no one would think to do it. I don't think anyone would think to do it because they don't really use practical sets anymore. And the fact that he was so obsessed with making it look like it is reality, but it's also artifice, I think that's where that joke comes from. I think. I could be wrong. But I think that was a really, like, I took note of that gag. What do you think, Ian?
Yeah, it didn't really do anything for the movie on a whole, but it was like, it's like the pickle with your sandwich. It just it just added something that you don't need, but goddamn, I'm glad it's there.
Yeah,
it sets up the meal. Yeah, it brought you into the world, and it kind of allowed you to try and take the movie seriously while also still understanding that everything is like pushed to the max with the characters. Because I feel like if they hadn't set that up, we jumped to Al Pacino doing his thing, I feel like maybe the tone would feel off, and I wouldn't know how to feel with like this weird character guy like putting somebody in a brick of cement.
So, okay, let's talk about, we have to talk about the actors, but we're also going to talk about the tone of the movie, which was tricky because you mentioned Al Pacino. We'll get to him in a minute. But first, we got to talk about Warren Beatty. So we should mention, and because I was trying to watch this in the context of when it came out and everything, and Warren Beatty and Jack Nicholson were buddies all through the 70s. They're infamous for being womanizers and boozers and partiers. So I have a feeling that Warren Beatty went, oh, so you were the Joker? Okay. Well, then I'm going to be Dick Tracy in this other movie. And then I'm going to get all these other guys. Like I'm going to get Al Pacino. Right. I'm going to get Paul Sorvino. I'm going to get Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah. So many people are in this movie. Right. So many.
Right. Yeah. So many big actors. And I'm going to have my fun over here. But it's funny because Warren Beatty, I think he's a good actor. I think he was fine. However, I got to point out that he might have been too old for the role. Okay. And one of the pieces of evidence I have is that there's a scene near the end of the movie where Tess, the kid, and Warren Beatty are sitting at the diner. Mm-hmm. And Tess and the kid are side lit, just like you are right now. Like I can see this side of your face is lit and this side is not. Warren Beatty was not. Warren Beatty had this flat, like, shadow lighting on him, which tells me, oh, well, they don't want people to see how old he is. Right. Because he was probably like 40 or 50 at the time, right?
Yeah. So, okay.
That's just my guess. But other than that, I think it was fine. What do you think?
Yeah, he played the part well. I think that he shines when he's playing against, like, the kid.
That's a good point.
You know, like, I really like their dynamic together. I think Dick Tracy, at least from this movie, is not like an interesting character by himself.
Yeah.
Like he is just, and that's fine. I think it actually really works in this movie. He plays the role he's supposed to. He's like this straight man, cop, no nonsense cop, even though he's constantly breaking the law to, anyways.
That's the 30s.
Yeah. No, I think he was totally fine. He played the role well.
Yeah, he was fine. Yeah. Champion, what do you think?
I agree. You're using all the words that I was going to use. Straight man. He's a foil for basically everyone else around him, which I think the movie needed him to play that because everything else was amped up to 11. So you needed him to kind of play it straight to ground the film. Yeah, Otherwise, it's just a balloon floating up in the. I guess we don't.
That's actually a really good
goes off the rails. We need him to.
Yeah,
anchor it.
It's also he's not in the makeup too, so that helps too, right?
Yeah.
So we'll talk about all the good guys because there's only a few. Then we have Tess. I don't know if you guys have your thing open, but I don't know the actress that played Tess, but I thought
Glenn Headley.
I don't really know her from anything, but I thought she was fine. Like she, again, just like you said, like she played that role straight and down to earth, and she was a good kind of contrast to all the craziness that was going on. So I thought she was perfect for the role. What do you think?
Yeah, she also has this like very like classic look to her face.
Sure.
I buy that she's from that time period for some reason.
Good point.
I don't know if it was the makeup, the costume, like I'm sure it was everything.
Well, it's like Alan Moore said in Watchmen, faces come in and out I
Yeah.
Faces do. And her face looks like it belongs in the 1930s.
It's so strange. But I can't like if Zendaya was in a movie in the 30s, I don't know if I would buy, like I would be like, oh, this is somebody from present day.
You actually raised an interesting point in that every single character in the movie is white, but that's for, that's for another episode.
Okay, yeah.
That's not a single non-white person. But anyway,
she has this and the way that she's acting, the way that she portrays the character, I think it really does work. I almost wish, like her and Madonna, I wish they had a little bit more to do in the movie.
Sure. Yep.
But other than that, yeah, she was good.
Yeah, I thought she was fine. Ian?
Mm-hmm. I agree. She was a perfectly plausible love interest for Dick Tracy. It worked.
Yeah.
But I also agree with that. I think that her and Madonna should have had more interactions themselves.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Particularly because Madonna was sort of pining for Dick Tracy the entire film. There should have been some sort of interaction between the two of them.
Especially since, like, I guess it would ruin the reveal, but the reveal was awful.
Stupid. Yeah.
The reveal.
I didn't hate it. I don't know. I've seen the reveal,
right?
But I still thought it was good. See, because like this is the first time you've seen the twist,
right?
But I remember it as a kid,
right.
So and like for you, it just didn't work for you guys.
No.
How come?
You want to go first?
What makes me believe that she was doing that this whole time. Like,
because the movie told us.
Yeah, that exactly.
Yeah, but it just told us at the end, though, right? Like,
there was no hints.
Exactly. I want some breadcrumbs.
Yeah,
I
there has to be some kind of,
even if I don't get them at the moment, right?
Yep.
Because the entire movie, I'm like, who is this No Face? That's another problem with No Face character, is that I didn't really like. After a while, I stopped caring because there was just, oh, there's No Face. There was no setup aside from there's No Face.
And Dick Tracy looking at the same two pictures.
Yeah. And like No Face should have done something that made her or him more compelling.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah, maybe some interactions with Al Pacino, like make us want to know who this person is. Because I just assumed that it was just
another bad guy.
Right? Or I don't know. I didn't love the twist. Well, I guess
the problem is that Madonna in the movie is playing both sides, and then No Face is playing both sides. Mm-hmm. It's almost like it would have been better if it was Tess. Because then you're like, oh my God, it's Tess, or it's something. But the fact that it's like, oh, it's another character that's in the like kind of an anti-hero. Yeah. So it's not really a shock. It's not as shocking, right?
And I guess in a sense that's kind of the breadcrumb too, that that she was playing both sides, and so is No Face.
I guess. And then she also
subtle.
has interactions with the piano player, but like that's not.
No,
I don't think that's a strong enough connection for us to be like, no, the whole time. It's like, oh, okay, they sat next to each other. I guess.
At the end of the day, when they took off the mask and it's her, I'm like, oh, I didn't really care.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, so now we have to talk about Madonna, who, as everyone knows, is Madonna. She was huge at the time. This was probably almost peak Madonna. Before she did that sex book and all that stuff, coming off of, so this is in between Like a Prayer and Vogue, and then after this would have been the sex book and all that stuff. So this inspired an album called I'm Breathless, where there's a few songs come from it, like Hanky Panky and a few other hits. Her acting has always been questionable. She tried to become an actress. She was in this. Okay. She was in an erotic thriller with someone, I can't remember who. And then she did that musical, Evita. Her acting never really took off. I like Madonna kind of, but she's always seems phony to me. She always seems like she's acting. And so she doesn't quite work for me.
Okay.
But she also has a quality. She still has, of course, she's Madonna. She has a charisma and she has a great look. And she kind of fits that femme fatale role. So I don't know. Ian, what do you think?
I think she was okay. She was not miscast. She definitely fit the role of this seductive, sultry, nightclub singer.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I didn't think the scenes of her singing worked at all, though. Considering that she's a singer trying to make it into acting.
Sure.
The scenes where she was singing, they all felt flat.
You mean her singing was flat, or do you mean
was it her singing? Because I don't think that it was, and if it was, her singing was dubbed. Like this wasn't.
Sure.
But it didn't feel like she was singing when they were doing these big cabaret numbers. They felt too small and too amateur. Mm-hmm. She didn't seem as though she was into it, right? She wasn't doing much on stage. She was just kind of standing there and singing. But for someone of her level of musical talent, I would expect a little bit more pomp and circumstance on stage, a little bit more movement, a little bit. It just didn't feel grand enough to me.
You know, I'll say one other thing about Madonna, because, you know, hey, let's be clear. COVID exists, and we went through the pandemic, and we can still talk about it, right? During the pandemic, I not only did I have a Dick Tracy phase.
Where are you going with this?
No, because during the pandemic, I watched a lot of
Madonna
movies.
Phase.
I had a Madonna phase,
right?
Where I watched Desperately Seeking Susan. I watched I rewatched Truth and Dare. I went crazy. Okay, yes, and I also watched like the entire tour of like 1990, whatever year it was, that 1991 or whatever. And I remember watching like her performing not Vogue, the big hit before that. Whatever it was, it doesn't matter. But I remember thinking, like, in my pandemic stupor of isolation, going, "Oh my God, I get it now. I understand why she was so big, because she's a great performer and she's incredible on stage and blah blah blah." And it's kind of like what you're saying. She should have been bigger in this movie. Mm-hmm. There should have been more. It's almost like Lady Gaga. Like, if Lady Gaga is going to be in Joker 2, or if she's going to be in a movie, like, you expect, like, let's bring Lady Gaga's going to bring it.
Yeah.
But Madonna didn't quite bring it in this movie.
I wanted those scenes to be over the top.
Right.
Over the top. And considering everything else that's going on, there's no excuse for them not to be over the top.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And for how much they show it.
Like, right.
Yeah.
When they keep cutting back to her when they're having that firefight outside.
Yeah.
And they did that a couple of times.
It doesn't feel like it's building. Like it's not adding anything to the action scenes. Like I was talking about earlier, I think maybe that's it too. Maybe in their head, it looked cooler. Because if it looked cool and it added to the montage, I don't even think I would think about, like, what does this have to do with the scene?
Exactly.
But because it was flat and we're just like one shot looking at her standing there singing, I'm like, what is happening? What's going on?
It's the other aspect of it, sorry to interrupt,
no problem,
is that those scenes, when they keep cutting back to her in the nightclub, they have to match the intensity of the firefight outside.
Right, yeah.
Otherwise, it's
point.
bringing the energy down every time they cut away from
Tommy
it.
Gun.
That's a good point.
Yeah, you have to be at least that
That's
level
a great
of energy.
Point.
Yeah.
It's almost like they just thought, if we just point the camera at Madonna, everyone will be, excited.
Yeah.
But now, 30 years later, it's like, what's the point of this? Whereas if you go back and watch like a Marilyn Monroe movie or an Elvis movie, you go, oh my God, I get it. I get why this was so big, right? And this movie didn't capture that.
No, I don't think so. I think she was fine in the movie with what she had. I actually liked her in the movie, but it just wasn't enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
Al Pacino. So I've been rewatching Godfather 1 and 2. I love Al Pacino, but Al Pacino notoriously, it's like one day he woke up and he was a great actor, and then he went to bed and woke up and he fucking, she's got a great ass, he turned into the new Al Pacino.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, maybe is this movie where it started? I don't know. It's almost like Batman for Jack Nicholson. Like Jack Nicholson after Batman, he could never come down. And I feel like Al Pacino in this movie, he was so over the top. But when you watch Batman, Jack Nicholson is so charismatic and funny, right? But when you watch this movie, there's not a moment where you're like, oh, Al Pacino had a great line. Never.
I think it's because he never fucking stopped talking.
Yeah, that's maybe it. You're right.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That last scene, I wanted to feel suspense so bad.
Yeah.
In the whole, even
the gears, whatever that is, the boathouse.
When they're going through the tunnel and they're like on the
talking
thing.
That's a good point.
It's just him, my Dick Tracy, I didn't kidnap you. Oh, you wanted me to kidnap you? Okay, I'll do it. It's like non-stop. I don't even have a chance to listen to his one-liners because he's already saying his next one. It's just like,
and none of them are funny. None of them are memorable. Whereas like Jack Nicholson is the Joker. Every single quote is a meme. Like, wait till they get a load of me.
Yeah.
Like every line is a meme, right?
Yeah.
What do you think?
This town needs an enema.
Yeah, this town needs an enema. They're all quotable.
It was babbling. I again, style over substance here, because that character, again, the costume and the prosthetics, they look great.
Yeah.
And you can see what he's going for. The voice, it worked, but he just wouldn't shut up. So you get bored with it. And that last scene when Dick Tracy's hiding in the shadows, and it's this big, like, oh my goodness, this is suspenseful. They're going to crush Tess in this giant gear thing. But the dialogue just distracted me from everything that was going on because it was just inane.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you think, first of all, James Caan was in this film. For one scene, his co-star from The Godfather, and you'd think that even if Ian, have you seen The Godfather?
No.
Oh my fucking God. Are you serious?
Don't tell anyone.
Oh my God.
Don't tell anyone.
Don't worry. No one watches this podcast. It's okay. But it's like, if they would have just done Michael Corleone, but like a little exaggerated, you'd be shitting your pants watching this movie, right?
Yeah.
But instead, you're just like Jack Nicholson is funny and scary.
Yes,
right?
100% that.
Like, you're laughing at Jack Nicholson, but then he also, remember what he does to the girl in Batman?
Yeah.
Like, puts acid on her face?
Mm-hmm.
That haunt, like, I wake up at night, 4 a.m, cold sweat. I'm like, oh my God, Jack Nicholson did that. But in this movie, there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
He's just like a fool.
They kind of try. Remember, like, the very beginning of the movie when he's got lips in the box and he's dumping concrete on him. That should have been a very stressful scene. That should have been scary.
Yep.
If we're going to take any of these villains seriously, which I guess we don't, right? At all.
You know what? It's like if they would have done the exact same lighting and the same costumes, but just filmed it in a serious way. Like you have the actor, you have the cement coming down on them, and you just film it in a serious way so that it feels real. Like this character, this person's dying and they're suffering, but everything is just so... Like, again, this is 1990, so we have to put it in the context of like Ninja Turtles and all these other movies we've seen. It fits in with all those other movies where it just feels like, oh, it's just another cartoon joke movie. And it never feels real, right? So you're never really scared. You never really feel like you're in danger, right? Like when Tess is kidnapped, you're just like, well, I know she's going to get rescued, so who gives a shit, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the problem.
Yeah. It's one of the problems for sure.
Yeah, it just never feels like
things that should be that should have some gravitas. Things that should be. Oh my goodness, is it going to happen? Is this going to like when Lips is in the box and they're dumping cement on him? They're dumping it on his head, and it looks like they're pouring like whipped cream on him. It looks silly.
Yeah.
You can't see his face, so you can't tell if he's scared. There's no way for him to convey his emotions.
Right. Yeah, should see it. We should see it rising in the box. We should see it start to come up to his neck, and then none of it works.
Lois Lane and Superman, like Lois Lane being buried alive in the car, that still haunts my nightmares. Like that's perfectly done, and they could have done that, even though it looks like a cartoon, even though it's all primary colors. They could have staged it in that way that you're saying, and had it feel like someone's actually dying.
I mean, even in that big meeting with James Caan, why didn't he just kill him in that scene? Why did he walk down the stairs, go into his car, and then that's when it...
Well, I know what you're saying, but I think it still accomplished the same thing. He did kill him, right?
I guess
it could have been done differently.
But if he kills him or pushes him out the window or something,
then it's more. It's just like Jack Nicholson does it. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
you know, like we feel his power, and then everybody else in that room is like, "Oh shit, okay, let's take this guy seriously." It's I don't know. Yeah, not great.
Okay, so here's the thing about this movie, and I was gonna research it, but I didn't. But you have Wikipedia open. Okay, so Warren Beatty owns the rights to this film, and he wanted to do a sequel. But apparently he can't get funding, or whoever, Touchstone won't let him. And so part of the contract or part of the rights is that he has to use – this is one of the things about rights in Hollywood. You have to produce something in order to maintain the rights. So apparently, you can look this up, every year Warren Beatty produces like a online video where he films himself as Dick Tracy going, "Hey, fuck you, I still have the rights." And he just releases it. But if you look it up,
that's amazing.
Apparently this is a real thing. And I was going to like delve into it, but it is a real thing. And in the time that I take to waste time, Josh is going to confirm, but this is a real thing. And so that's why it's been 30 years and there's never been a sequel. Yeah.
Somebody posted something to the chat group for the movie night here.
Right.
About that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it is real. Okay. So
thing.
It's not my imagination.
So I guess the plan is that he's going to own the rights doing this until it goes into the public domain in something like 2027 or something like that.
Which is soonish. Yeah, which is soonish. So I guess the thing is now one thing people, fans have pointed out is that they killed almost all the villains. So there's I mean, we don't know much about the comic book, but there's probably nowhere to go. But I guess the question is, can you see, Ian, why they didn't make a sequel, or was it a failure? Was it a success? What do you think?
Again, frustrating.
Right.
I don't know what to think about this movie because there were so many things about it that I'm gonna leave this thinking, my good, that was great.
Yeah.
But on a whole, I don't know. I was bored through too much of it. I didn't know what was happening through too much of it.
Right.
Like I still don't know how Dick Tracy got out of jail. I don't remember that.
I don't remember that either.
He was being transferred to another one. So
even
then
him going into jail wasn't well done. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't understand how Dick Tracy figured out that Tess. What was Al Pacino's character's name again? Big Boy
Caprice or something.
How did he find out that they were going to be at the bridge after they escaped on that tunnel?
He looked through. He looked in the wine cellar and then just knew where they were going to be.
Yeah,
that was ridiculous.
Yeah,
You're right.
Wait, why?
I know.
Like he didn't have any clues.
So
the only way that he could have figured it out is because he just kept hearing him yammering on. Like,
right.
He's in that tunnel. I could just hear. I can hear him talking.
They should have added that in.
Follow
but
his voice.
It's almost like this movie was like a step in between Batman and like The Spirit. Because we watched The Spirit and we watched like Doc Savage and we watched all these movies, and it just feels like it's better than that, but it's still not as good as like Batman or like a good movie. It's like in between.
But at the same time, there were so many little things that just poke up above so many of these other movies. These little things are burned on my memory now. Like the kid just poking his head up in the back window of a car.
Yeah.
And then ducking back down. Just little things like that.
Yeah.
Just so well done.
Like that was
From
an extra
artistic
dimension
standpoint.
To the movie.
Yeah.
The relationship with the kid was cool.
Not to mention the kid was, I think he stole the show. I think he stole the show.
He was a good actor. I agree.
Fantastic.
I've never noticed till now.
Don't remember him from What About Bob? He played.
No, I didn't know. Oh my
Sigmund?
gosh, I didn't know that.
The little kid? Yeah, same kid.
So who is he now? Is he a big actor now?
No idea.
Okay. It's Ryan Gosling. No.
Charlie Korsmo.
Okay.
You saying that about Dick Tracy just like looking up in the wine cellar and knowing where to go, I think that is the biggest problem with this movie is that Dick Tracy doesn't do any detective work in this movie.
That's a good. I think like, you just hit the nail on the head. He doesn't do anything.
Right.
It's like he has his relationship with Tess and he takes care of the kid.
Right.
But he's not actually like a protagonist.
Yeah.
It's not like the only thing he does is he actively breaks the rules. Right?
Which is crazy because his whole thing is that he's trying to stop these guys from breaking the rules.
Sure, but that's
right? Like
but that's the plot of 4 Lethal Weapon movies, so we can't criticize that trope. But
we're supposed to believe that he's like the good cop.
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
He's supposed to be the good boy.
Yeah.
And he's not. But that would fix everything I feel like in this movie almost. Like even the whole twist of like No Face. If he was trying to look for clues to figure out who this person is, what's going on, then the twist would work because we would be getting these little pieces along the way. He doesn't do anything in it. In the movie.
Yeah.
Like
that's it. Well, that's again.
I know.
It's like, I get into an argument with a friend of mine who just dismisses all this stuff as crap, and I'm like, no, you have to analyze why. Why did it not click? Like you watch the movie and you go, okay, some things work, some things don't. And I think we're close to hitting the nail on the head. The fact that the protagonist is kind of passive a little bit.
Right.
He's not really a good detective. He's not really moral. He's not really whatever. And like certain things, like the bad guy doesn't quite work.
Yeah.
Like these things are important when you're making a popular blockbuster entertainment film. These things all have to work, and they don't in this film. But other things do work, right? So
something I was thinking when we were watching is this thought popped in my head that if it wasn't for the style and the art direction and the cinematography and the music, Danny Elfman once again, this would have been a nothing movie. This would have been it wouldn't have gone anywhere. It wouldn't have done anything. We would not be talking about it.
I agree.
So, okay, this goes back to my theory about Star Wars, that if you stage Star Wars as a play, it would still be awesome. Because even though people make fun of the dialogue in Star Wars, it's actually a very entertaining story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's
thought out.
Very well thought out. That's what makes Star Wars the greatest movie ever made. But anyway, we're not going to talk about that. That's coming soon.
I thought Night Shift was the
greatest
movie.
Oh, that's true. Wait, Night Shift, then Star Wars. I'm sorry. But yeah, so I think you absolutely have hit the nail on the head. So, okay, knowing that, what about Batman? What if you took away all the art direction and style and cinematography of Batman? Would the script itself be good enough to just watch as a play or something?
Josh, you want to take this one?
As a play, maybe not, but
or as a movie with like
as a
just
movie,
a detective and
so are you keeping Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson? Because
if Michael Keaton's in the movie, it's automatically a good movie. So it doesn't
right, because I think that their dialogue with each other is fantastic.
Yeah,
Jack Nicholson he didn't even have to put on the Joker makeup.
Okay, you got it.
You know what I mean?
That's
like,
part of it. Yeah, you're right.
He would still be a memorable bad guy in that movie. Like it wasn't the setting, it wasn't his costume, it wasn't the makeup, it was his acting and what he was doing in the movie that worked.
I think. Yep. Sorry, we talked about this when we reviewed 1989 Batman. Is that even though I love Christopher Nolan's Batman, Dark Knight trilogy, one of the things about Tim Burton's Batman is that you feel like they are playing to an audience. They are saying, like, it's like they're entertaining an audience. They're being funny. They're being interesting. They're being whatever. But like in this movie, they're not. It's not like we sat in an audience here, and there was a few moments where people laughed, but there wasn't many. There wasn't many moments where people felt like a communal experience, which is what theater is supposed to be for.
And maybe that's why the shed scene worked so well and is so memorable with us, because I feel it's also the only time in the movie that I could remember where the setting played a part in the movie, where after that they just happened to be in all of this makeup. Like it's not really like pushing it within the story and what the characters are doing. It's kind of just,
it's almost like we need a Christopher Nolan or someone like him to take all this art direction and all this style and then make a really good script out of it.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. That's all.
I'm sure people are tired of hearing this from me, but this would be a great animated movie because you could like push the look of all these characters and then buy it in the world. Right? Like you can really like the visualization of it. It's like it works in this movie. Like visually, it's really nice. But in animation, I think you could even like
go further.
It would be really fun. Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah,
I agree to an extent. I think that this movie did a really good job of sort of pushing up against what makes an animated film great.
Right.
But doing it in live action.
Yeah.
It suffered in ways that an animated version of this would also have suffered.
Yes.
Not a very weak plot, characters that don't really do anything.
Okay, I don't know if there's anything more we can say about Dick Tracy, but guess what? We want to know what you think of this film.
Do we? Oh, yeah, we do.
Yeah. So if you're watching this on YouTube or our website, or if you're listening to this, let us know your thoughts. And be sure to join us next episode for the Flash pilot from 1990-ish with what's his name? John Wesley Shipp, I think. I should know this, but we refuse to do research. Be sure to join us for that, though. And be sure to join us every week at Meteor with Champion.
Yeah, that's me.
The next episode, the next movie we're going to watch is...
Gremlins.
But by the time this airs, Gremlins will already have been shown.
Yeah, but we got Airplane after that.
We got Airplane.
Right.
We got all these
Leslie
other cool movies.
Nielsen.
So be sure to come out and join us. And Josh, you can take it from here.
Yeah, you can also find all of our stuff over on our website at thecomicbooksyndicate.com. All of our podcasts are also video format, so check them out over on our YouTube channel. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about the stuff we're talking about. And keep in touch. And until next time.
See you later.
Yeah.